I got a bunch of dark-skinned brothers.
Right? For
Yeah.
real. All right. So let's get over here. I'm
People are
sure
like,
people.
you can't say that. You're a white guy. I'm like, so what can I say? Only can I say you're my light-skinned brother? What? What? See,
For real. All right. Just pulled up. Happy birthday to sweet Avery.
oh yeah,
It's a birthday.
today's the day.
It's your
Little Avery.
birthday. All right. All right. So let me do a little shareage. I'm gonna share that.
I'm working on that right now.
Share. It is share. People are probably freaking out, bro.
Yeah.
They're thinking the rapture's getting ready to happen or something because we are on time.
How did that happen?
How did that even happen? Let's see if it's on Twitter, right? Should be on Twitter. I think we're shadow banned on Twitter. I thought Elon Musk fixed all that.
I know. They're like,
What happened here, man? It's not even pulling up on Twitter. Dude, come on, man.
huh.
See? Oh, there we go. There we go. We live on Twitter. All right. Little retweet action. I put it out there today. I look a little fuzzy. Do I look fuzzy?
Well, you mean because you didn't shave this morning, or
But I looked on Twitter, looked a little fuzzy.
fuzzy wuzzy? Was a bear?
Hey, bro. Hey,
Eh,
latency gone.
fixed.
Yeah,
Blinga.
what's what I'm talking about?
Hey, tell everybody real quick how you fixed it. I mean, just the technical.
Nah, I don't want to share all my secrets, my technical.
That's true. That's
You know
true.
what I'm saying?
Keep that secret.
That's right. That's right. Michael Hanks said we're on time ish. Hey, I said
7:05's on
so.
time
Here's what
too.
I said. I put out on Facebook we would be on in about 20 minutes, and that was 9:43, I believe. So we were right on time.
Exactly.
So all right, we got folks jumping on, and we will get ready to get rolling here in just a minute. If you have an opportunity, hit the share button. I don't know what I just did there. I think I just hit something. Uh, hit the share button and or the retweet button. It is on Twitter. It is alive and well on Twitter, and we do have a viewer on Twitter, which is awesome. So
YouTubing it? Are we YouTubing it?
we're YouTubing it. It's on. Every time I hear that, all I can think of is, do you ever see that? Oh, what's his name? Golly, I just lost his name. The comedian, Christian
Uh,
comedian,
d- um,
Tim Hawkins.
yeah.
Tim Hawkins, when he talks about going tubing, you want to go tubing? Hey Tim, up in Minnesota, the
Yeah.
Minnesota people. Hey Tim, you want to go tubing? So we're tubing, man. We're YouTubing.
YouTubing. That's so hilarious.
All right. You ready to roll?
I'm so ready.
Hey, let's get this party started, and
Get
then
it.
more people will be coming. And
Let's go.
it's already been a lively morning, so this is gonna be a good one. All right, here we go.
All right.
Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham broadcasting live from the loft at FAC Toledo. And alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the Third. Good morning, Ken. What's happened?
Man, it's a good day. It is a good day.
It's a golf day is what it is.
And this is a golf day. We played yesterday. Kyle flew in. He preached for us on Mother's Day. It's my son, and we played yesterday in a one of the largest Christian schools in our area. They had a benefit tournament, so we played that yesterday, and
How'd that go?
we did pretty good. We shot a 58. It was pretty windy. It was pretty windy.
Did pretty good. Shot a 58.
Yeah,
Not bad.
yeah, did pretty good.
Not too shabby. That's awesome, man.
Second
Yeah, it was a
place.
little windy yesterday. It was a little windy.
Yep.
But it is beautiful weather, and it is golf season for sure. But before we can get to golf, bro, we got a podcast to do today.
Hey, let's go.
And
Let's do this.
it's gonna be a dandy.
Dandy. Oh my word. It sounded for a second there like I don't even know who this guy is, but I've heard it sounded like a David Letterman phrase right there. I'm not sure who he is, but
Is it Paul Schaefer? Paul Schaefer, the band guy, dandy. So we're looking forward to a great conversation today, and we are thankful for everybody that is jumping on. We are live right now, Ken. We're live on Facebook and on Twitter, and we're tubing on YouTube.
exactly.
We're tubing, and so we're thankful for everybody joining us on all of those platforms. You can help us out this morning. We're live, so you can help us out by going and hitting the share button on Facebook, the retweet button on Twitter, and whatever you do on YouTube, just do it. So there you go. But we're thankful for everybody jumping on, being a part today. We're looking forward to a great conversation, Ken.
Let's go.
And I want to. I'm gonna just like
Yeah.
you remember in baseball before
Yeah.
a game, you would
Yeah.
do like a little soft toss.
Yeah.
You know, like the coach would kneel down on one
Up against the
knee.
fence.
And you just toss the ball up just a little bit, and then you just hammer one into the fence.
Mhm.
And so I'm gonna do that for you today. I'm gonna just toss one up to you and just let you kind of hammer one. But so today we want to talk about, over the years there've been a lot of trends,
Mhm.
and you know so a lot of trends as it pertains to how do we build more community. How do we build more connection? How do we create space where people can genuinely, build meaningful relationships within the body, but also for the purpose of multiplication, reaching people outside of a service context. And so, man, I just chuckled because
John.
John Hummel,
John. I know. You're
his
doing.
comment about YouTube. Anyway, that's not, yeah. So, um, all of these trends over the years, we've seen cell groups, we've seen home churches,
Mhm.
micro churches has become a popular trend.
That's a trend.
We talk a lot about multiplication groups and all that kind of stuff. So today, what we want to kind of do is we want to dive in and we talk about all of these kinds of things, and talk about, from an apostolic perspective. We're talking about, the way the apostles did it. We want to talk about these things and talk about, you know, why a lot of people will just follow the trend. Like, oh, we got to go do cell groups because
Mhm.
this church did cell groups and it led to this massive growth in their church. And so that's what we need to go do, or we need to go home church. That's, bless God, we got to get back to home church. That's the way they used to do it in the book of Acts. So I want to throw it to you, because this is a lot of your wheelhouse. I know you've done a lot of study on it. I know this was a big part of what you did for your master's degree. So just kind of throw it to you, Ken. Set this conversation up for us today. We don't want to be trend chasers. We don't
Right.
want to just chase trends to chase trends. We want to follow biblical concepts and biblical principles. So let's talk about this idea today about, like, what does the ideal small group type setting look like? Why is this an important conversation? Why should we be talking about this?
Very good. That's I mean, I think that's a great way to, kind of launch into this discussion, because I think it's to say on one end of the spectrum that there's a trend is important, because I think sometimes what happens, the reason why I think that's important to interject into the discussion from the get-go, is the fact that a lot of times what happens is, with trends,
Yeah,
is things get duplicated and people don't even know why.
sure,
I mean,
sure,
it's like, oh, that must be the thing I need to do, right? Or that's the thing that's going now. Okay, well, we don't want to be the church that's behind the times.
right.
We've got to implement that. So I think it's important for us, as we, really look into that, to say, and as you said, we don't want to be trend chasers. We want to uncover and recover biblical models. So the way I look at it is that years ago, there was, I think there was an awareness that there was some, to some degree, well, I would say to some degree, I think that to a large degree, there was some level of disconnection as it related to people in local churches, right?
Yeah,
Like, for example,
sure.
I think that what happened in most churches for many years was that that by and large people gathered together on Sunday, right?
Sure.
They came to church on Sunday, and let's just be honest, there's really not a lot of connection and fellowship associated with coming to a church service. I mean, people come in, they sit with their family, they kind of sit with people that, you know, they generally sit with. You know, there are times when I think if most people would really be honest today, there are times that probably, you know, you could go to, if the place that you get the most amount of fellowship is a church service. I mean, it's possible that you could go to a church service. If you go, let's say you go to a church that's, you know, 200 people or larger, that you
Right.
could go to a church service and not speak to, man, 2/3 of the church for a month, 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
100%.
so I think that what happened was that, so years ago, there was an awareness and acknowledgement of that. And I think some of that was that people said, or pastors, leaders, or whatever, they were feeling this, they were sensing this, they were acknowledging that, you know, we need to be closer, we need to be more, you know, the body of Christ should be closer, there should be better fellowship. And so I believe that cell groups then became, you know, sort of popularized. But I think this is the important thing. So let's take this and put cell groups in a placeholder that says, for the most part, cell groups originated out of a sense of a need for deeper connectivity within the body of Christ.
Sure. Absolutely.
So let's stop there. I'll just stop there, and we'll, maybe what we can do is we can segment it and then go on to, okay, well then what came next? But maybe this might be a good spot to just simply say, you know, how cell groups were originated, why they originated. And I don't, you know, maybe if you might have some comments related to that.
No, absolutely. And one of the things about cell groups, I think, is I think as we talk about all of these kinds of things, one of the important factors that I think we have to remember is culture trumps all, right?
Right.
Culture eats programs for breakfast. So we know that. And so a lot of times what I've seen or observed kind of over the years is if you have a context of you know, kind of community oriented living anyway,
Right.
cell groups can thrive in that type of setting because you've already got that going. But the reality is if you don't have a culture of community, then you're going to do cell groups, and it's going to be no different than all of the other programs that you're doing. It's going to be just another church activity, another church event that you do. And so that's why we talk so much about culture, of why that's so critical, so important. And again, there were, I remember back in the day, you know, when cell groups really kind of became the end thing, the big thing. Everybody's talking about, man, you got to go to this conference and you got to learn how to implement cell groups and you got to do this. And then people went home and tried cell groups, and what they found was you got the same kind of level of participation in cell groups that you got in other activities and ministries going on within the church.
Correct.
And so, you know, a lot of, so I'll give you like an example. I know a couple of Spanish speaking churches, right? So made up of people that primarily speak Spanish as their primary language. And so their style of living is very interconnected, very community oriented. In that kind of context, a cell type ministry can really thrive. If you don't have a multiplying culture, then what ends up happening is cell groups become like every other ministry, everything else you do, and it doesn't lead to multiplication, which is the reason it's called cell ministries, right? Is because cells are supposed to multiply. That's the whole concept, and that's the whole point. But if you don't have a multiplying culture, then what ends up happening is they become sterile Bible studies, basically.
That's right.
Right?
Right. And boring. Like people get together.
just throws out and boring.
No, they are because I've got so I pastor some people that were previously associated to a church that they did these like huge, like everybody had to be in them. They had this their entire structure of their church was built off of like a cell group deal. And when we started talking, literally when we started talking about doing life groups, which is
Yeah.
a different, so this is another like maybe a bridge thing that maybe we can go to here. We started talking about doing life groups. And so I literally, for two reasons. First of all, because of the fact that we didn't want them to be, like you were just saying, I think it's so important is what is your culture and what is your emphasis, right? As you were
Sure.
just saying, what is the culture of your church? What is the emphasis? What do you emphasize? So the culture of your church, connectivity, emphasis, missionality, right? So those are
Sure.
the two things. So, do you have a connected culture? Do you have a missional emphasis? Then what happens is if you don't have either of those, so like you said, you could do cell groups if you have a culture of connectivity. But if you
Right.
don't have a missional emphasis, then what happens is cell groups just become another institutional program. And
Right.
here's the deal. This is the thing, folks. We got to really understand this, that anytime something doesn't exist naturally,
There you go.
intrinsically at the DNA level, then when the church institution tries to implement it to fix a problem, it will always be sterile and it will
Yes.
always be artificial,
So good, man.
right?
So good.
It's like the reason, it's like this weird thing that you can actually have, like a horse can breed with a donkey and produce a mule, but almost always a mule is sterile.
Right.
It's
Right.
because they weren't really intended, even though they can breed, they weren't intended to be the same species. They weren't intended. So there's enough connection to it that, and this is the thing that I find so often, um, in church settings, in a general context, I think that what you find is that you've got something that's sort of, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and you try to put the two together and you're like, why is this not reproducing?
Yeah. Right.
Eh,
Because it reproduced for them.
yes,
Right. It
right,
worked for that culture, worked for that church. So what is wrong with us?
right.
And I love what you said. And this is something that we talk a ton about. And that is so many times what we try to do is what doesn't exist naturally, we try to make happen artificially. And so we look at it like, okay, exactly what you said. Man, we don't have connectivity in the church. You're coming and you're doing the hey, how you doing? Good to see you, brother. God bless you. And that's the deepest level of conversation that you have at a church service. And so as ministers and leaders, you look at it like, oh man, we've got to build deeper connection. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do away with Wednesday nights. We're gonna have these cell groups and people are gonna get really connected. And the truth is if you don't have that natural connectivity happening anyway, then it actually, like you said, it actually can become not even will it not multiply, but it actually can become demoralizing
Yeah.
because then people look at it like, oh man, I got another church thing that I got to go do and whatever, versus, you know, going back, trying to create that. I think the intentions are good. And again, one of the things we talk about is
Uh-huh.
most things that we do are neutral,
Mm.
right? Most things are neutral. What's the determining factor is are you building it on the foundation and the platform of organic relationship building and multiplication, or is this just another program that you've implemented in the church that's at some point probably going to produce the same results that just about every other program we do in the church produces, which is it may, if we, like Dan Greider always says, you may have people that become really good at hitting the add button fast,
That's it.
right, on the calculator. They can just hit it and they're faster than everybody else, and so it looks like that they're growing, but that's not multiplication. That's not the apostolic model that God has given us.
It's very, very good. That is very good. And you, as you go back to like it's so weird because, you know, like a horse has 64 chromosomes and a donkey has 62.
What? Here's my question.
And
How
so
do you know
a
that?
mule can't a
Why do
mule
you
can't
know that?
I don't
Ladies
know.
and gentlemen, welcome to my world, man. The dude is like photographic memory. Like he just pulls out of the thin air.
Yeah.
How?
I, well, I did a study, and I don't know. I did a study.
Of
It's
course you did.
Yeah, it's and so what happens is it's like so they end up having an extra chromosome, and because of that, it's incompatible, and I think I think it's so important that it really is important that we recognize that in this kind of a way, it's there is something beneficial to a mule because
Sure.
they've
Yeah.
got the height and the size of a horse, but they have the stoutness of the structure of a donkey. And so a mule is beneficial in this kind of way. It's just that it serves a purpose. It's just not reproducible.
Oh,
Welcome,
wow.
enter stage right cell groups
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
it serves a purpose. And you can look at it and you can say, yeah, but mules are they're strong, and mules can do like they've got the stamina of a horse, but the strength of a donkey. And there's mules serve a it's true, but they're sterile. And I think this is the thing that we need to understand is that cell groups in most contexts, like you just said, is a sterile Bible study. And there's a lot of reasons why. And its culture and emphasis is primarily, the key. What we had to do, as I mentioned earlier, when we started doing our life groups, I literally had to convince our people that they weren't cell groups,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
literally they
That's
were
the
like,
reflex.
no, 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 no. We had to, Lord have mercy. I just remember they would tell me the stories about going over to the house, and they had and here's the deal. They had a church wide study that they had to do. And they got together, and they all had to do the same church wide study because they all had to be on the same page, right? You couldn't be letting these people all do their own thing, because then, we got people all over the map at the church, and oh man, then we could have chaos. And this is what happens when you've got you're
Institutional.
it's it, because you're artificially trying to produce something that doesn't exist.
So
And
true.
so it becomes artificial. And so then what happens is they go and they take the cheese dip and the tortilla chips, and they got and somebody brings some wings, and whatever, and they're sitting there and they go through the Bible study, and they're like, oh my God, have mercy, when is this going to end? And these are the stories that I was hearing.
Yeah.
So what we had to do when we started our life groups was we had to call them missional life groups. So the crazy thing about it is that on one end of the spectrum, you've got sort of a cell group structure where you've got church people. But for us, what we did was we created what we called missional life groups, which was church people, but it was for the express purpose of multiplying disciples, connecting with people where you live, work, and play, inviting them into relationships so that they could come in and experience, that they can have, like we have one life group right now that's a pottery class. And I think like maybe 6 of the pottery class hasn't even been to Lifeway yet, but they're
Right.
connecting to our, to people in our church, and they're having great conversations, and they're talking about God. So it's primarily missional with connectivity and fellowship as a fringe benefit, as a
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah. I want to get there. I want to, if you're cool with it, what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of move through these things, and I want to get to that, because I think that's what
Okay.
that's
All right.
the focus of really what we want to talk about
All
today.
right.
Is we're not here to dog cell groups. That's not what we're doing. And I know there may be some that are doing it and like, oh man, you guys are dogging cell groups. We're not dogging cell groups. It's the same thing we've talked a lot about, and that is, the culture, the importance of culture, building that right culture. So we've talked about cell groups. One of
Okay.
the other things that has really emerged as kind of a popular trend and you'll hear this a
I think this.
lot,
I think this is smart. I think this is smart to where you're going with this. I think this is
right?
smart. You're push. You're gonna put. You're gonna put home the home thing in between. Yeah, I
Yes.
think that's smart. I think home group. That's smart, bro. That's a great observation. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is why Chris Dillingham is a trained broadcast professional, because I think you're exactly right. I think you got to put the home group, home church thing somewhere between cell group and life groups.
Yeah. So a big trend, I think again, I tend to try to think best that people's intentions are the best. And so I tend to think that motives are right. So I think there's a lot of people. Certainly there are some. Okay, let's be real about it. Certainly there are some that have rejected. We were talking about earlier about, you had mentioned the message conversation with Michael Frost and some of those kinds of things. There is biblical church governance, right? You mentioned Hebrews 13:17, right? Hebrews 13:17, is that what it is?
Right. Right.
And right, which is, there are those that are going to give an account for your soul. Who are these people? What do they look like and whatever? There are some, we know this. There are some that have used, well, man, we got to get back to being apostolic. And that was home churches. We got to be in the home. And there's some that have misused that, right? We understand that. We know that. But I also believe that there's a group of people that genuinely desire to see multiplication, genuinely
Spot on.
desire to see, the book of Acts movement. And they look at that and read, they continue daily in the apostles' doctrine, going from house to house. And are like, that's what we got to get back to, is we got to get back to house church. We got to get back to this. And so that kind of became this big popular trend. And I don't know if you want to throw in here, like right now, kind of it's kind of a, I don't know. It's not really a house church. It's not really a cell group, but
Yeah,
micro churches.
this is a tough deal. I think maybe because of the fact that they don't always completely fit linearly. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I think you're right. Okay. I think the important thing is, okay, so let's just do it like this. There's four things we're talking about today. Cell groups. We're talking about cell groups. We're talking about home fellowship church, like home church, house church movement.
Sure.
That's the phrase I think we should use.
There you go.
The house church
movement. Yeah.
And then there's a third piece, cell groups, and then or I'm sorry, life groups, and then there's this other trending thing right now of micro churches. So these are the kind of the four. They have similarities, but they're very structurally different in many ways.
Sure.
Yeah, I like that, bro.
So maybe just talk about the home church. Again, I think it's another. As much as we like to think, well, this is organic church, the way we're doing organic church. But the reality is, I think it's an institutional view of how to create a multiplication movement. Again, I think it all goes back to that. Everything that we look at is a desire ultimately to kind of create this multiplication movement. And so we're again kind of chasing trends. And so we take a little piece out of, the book of Acts, they went from house to house. And so they started, they started these house churches. So that's what we need to do, is start these house churches. So what is your view and perspective on the house church movement?
Oh boy. Okay, so yes, you're right. I think that, as you said, the house church is, to me, is a misguided form. I do believe that there are some people that literally are like, man, let's simplify, let's decomplexify.
I think that's a really good point, right? I think that's a really good point, because the institutional church becomes a complicated machine, right? That's kind of our journey, is the complicated machine to keep it going. And so I think that's a really good point about the house church, is it is an effort for simplification.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I think, so I think that, so I think that in a house church context, if you look at the church in Jerusalem, I think this is the thing that you're talking about. I think when you look at the church of Jerusalem, you find that there is this identity that the New Testament church had, the Book of Acts church had, wherein the scripture says they went house to house, right?
Mhm.
Breaking bread, eating their meat with gladness, continuing the apostles' doctrine, etc.
Right.
Well, first of all, they had a culture.
There you go.
Again, it goes back to what you were talking about, the Spanish church thing,
Absolutely.
right? They had a culture where it goes all the way back to Moses' 70 elders, where they were in the wilderness and Jethro came to his son-in-law Moses and said, Moses, look, you can't do this. This is gonna absolutely crush you. And so they chose, there were 70 elders that they chose, and God said, I will put a portion of your spirit on those 70 elders. And so I think it's really important that those 70 elders, that structure was also was not only a religious structure, but it was a societal structure. So we could call it was socio-religious. It was both part of their culture. Well, it was their culture, and their culture was formed by this socio-religious construct.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when we say socio-religious, we say, well, there was a social element to it because there was a social element to the Old Testament law.
Yeah.
How you treat, how do you treat a neighbor, and what do you do if you accidentally kill his cow, or what if you cause damage to his fence and his sheep get out? How do you repay that? There's sort of like civil legal elements to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
Sure.
that so what they were judging in some ways was societal, it was civil. But then on the other side, it was also religious in the sense that they were a theocracy. They were a civil society built on God's theocratic rule.
Sure.
So years later, here you've got this culture that basically that's their lifestyle. When the church begins in Jerusalem, it's just going to be natural for them to have a strong eldership model. It's going to be natural for them to have a house orientation. Number one, because it was societal and cultural, socio-religious. Number two is because you add to the church $3,000 souls on the first day of its inception. You add 3,000 new souls on the first day of its inception, and there's no building program that could keep up with that.
Yeah, right.
So I think
Absolutely.
there's
Out of
some
necessity, right?
practical, yeah. So I think that in that sense, people look at that and go, man, look at the church in its purest form. Look at the church in the Acts 2:42. It's in the book of Acts chapter 2. That's where the Holy Ghost fell. And then here we see them. And if we're going to be Acts 2:38 people, we might as well be Acts 2:42 people, and whatever. And you've got that. I think that people that want to restore that is a misguided perception of that. And then on the other flip coin, of the flip side of the coin is, I think that it's in some ways has become a placeholder for people that have just gotten either angry, upset, burnout, disgruntled, or whatever with the institutional church.
Absolutely. I think the house church movement, I think really is the byproduct of Western culture trying to recreate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like we're looking at what you said. We're looking at that Acts chapter 2 stuff, and we're looking at it through a Western lens, and this is how you recreate it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we miss the important principle.
Yeah.
I think there's some important principles through there that we have to learn how to apply in our context. So in certain cultures where you have a very strong communal type culture,
right,
that becomes a mechanism that does lead to multiplication, right?
Actually, you just said something interesting. You said a communal culture. I've actually specifically said to people who say, we need to get back to this house church thing. Why? Well, because, and they list all these things and they're like, the big buildings and all the money you have to spend and all the da, 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 and so on and so forth. And, whatever. And, and so I said, well, okay, so if you're going to be a purist, then why don't y'all get together, all y'all get together and sell all your possessions, sell all your stuff and have all things common and be a true purist. If you're going to be a purist, go all in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the missing piece of that is it sounds, I think we romanticize a little bit, but you laid that out beautifully about just kind of the cultural pieces that we're missing, particularly in Western culture. We're missing that predominantly. There are pockets where that's the case. It doesn't mean that we've talked about the importance of, I'm going to use the word decentralization, not for the sake of dismantling the organization or whatever, but putting the power back into the hands of the body to go make, to make disciples, to make the movement happen back in the hands of the body. And so there's some elements of that, right? And that's the case in most things is, I think there's a lot of truth in it.
It's a horse and a donkey.
It's a horse and a donkey. Hey, we need to write a book. I was thinking as you're talking there, we need to write a book called The Church Mule.
That's true.
The Church Mule.
Yeah.
Which is what most of our programs are. Okay. So the next one that I'm going to mention that is kind of it's the buzzing thing right now. Right. Mm-hmm. And that is micro churches, which I think micro churches kind of maybe fit a little bit with life groups a little bit, but missional.
It's a weird deal, isn't it? It's a weird deal.
So for those who may not be aware, why don't you just set up, like, what is a micro church? What does that mean? If you haven't heard the term, you're absolutely going to hear that term, because it is a definite trend that is happening right now. So talk to us about what a micro church is, what that means, and then maybe talk about some of the same things we've talked about with micro churches with what we've talked about the other two groups.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so yes, if you haven't heard what a micro church is, you will definitely be hearing about it very soon. Which is one of the reasons why, people tune into the Mobilized Church podcast, because they definitely want to be on the cutting edge. And if you are a constant subscriber of the Mobilized Church podcast, that you're going to be on the cutting edge of all these trends. And because we are. And
well, you say that in jest, but the reality is like we've given ourselves to all the things, and we try to stay with what's, where's the church moving? What are the things that are happening? We're connected with a lot of places. So, I mean, you say that joking, but that is really true. We've tried to make sure that we're up to speed with kind of what's going on in the church world.
Yeah. And we say that joking because we, for those of you that aren't part of the church tribe that we're a part of, we kind of have there's a little bit of a culture in our tribe. And I know we've got people that listen to us that come from different denominational backgrounds or whatever, but if you're in our tribe, our tribe doesn't really like people being experts. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like, oh, okay, you're the expert, I guess, huh? And that kind of thing. And I don't want to sound like, I don't want to sound sarcastic or facetious.
You're right.
And so I guess we kind of joke at and slough it off because maybe, sort of pre-deflecting,
exactly,
otherwise known as flinching, but,
deflecting.
So, all right. So micro churches, Chris and I went down to Tampa to a church called Tampa Underground. It's a very interesting church. It was formed by, they're not like the precursor. Like, I don't think Tampa Underground, I don't think was the precursor. I think that what's interesting is that this was a trend that was sort of underneath the surface among no denomination involved here. Like, so multiple denominations, but it really was situated in the arena of missiologists. like these people that were like missiology, people like Alan Hirsch and people like Michael Frost and people and organizations like Exponential and whatever that are trying to push and promote this idea of, man, let's be honest, we're just not reaching the world like we should be reaching the world. There should be something inside of us that's saying, that we are, that we need to be reaching the world in greater ways. And are we doing it the best way? And that's what missiology does. Missiology looks at it and says, why should we be reaching the world? How should we be reaching the world? And what are the ways that people, how's the church in China exploding the way it is, and the underground church? And so missiologists look at these kind of things and say, man, can that be replicated here? Can we do that here? And so that's why we're not being critical or harsh about like the cell group thing, or we're not being harsh about the home group thing, even though there's probably positive sides of it where they're desiring to be something. There's got to be more. We've got to, but then on the downside, sometimes these types of things attract people and thinking that are just oppositional to. So anyway, we went down to Tampa and to the Tampa Underground, spent some time there, and we were part of the Exponential. We had been invited to be a part of the Exponential Multipliers cohort.
Big shout out to our buddy Bill Kokenauer.
Yeah, Bill Kokenauer is 25 of the most missional churches in America, and so anyway, we were talking about these things. So we went to the Tampa Underground just to look at this church that started by a group of people getting together and going to the Philippines and saying, how could we recreate a missionary model? And I'm not talking about missional, but a missionary model, the sending of missionaries. How could we become a mission agency, a mission sending agency in the United States? And so what they did was they prayed about it, thought about it, whatever, and got together. They came back to the United States. They said, we're going to create a church where what we're going to do is we're going to provide the structural mechanisms to say the old model of churches was let's grow the church as big as we can. We can reach this city. This is what the church said, right? So the church, insert your name, right? First such and such church, right? First Pentecostal church, First Baptist church. And the model was, First Baptist church can reach the city and you can help. Yeah. They said, we wanted to flip that around. We wanted it to be First fill in the blank church, not can reach the city. We wanted it to be, you can reach the city and we can help.
Right.
And so what they did was they basically set up their structure where they would actually take people who had a desire to serve in a particular place of need in their community. And so they said, we're gonna serve in the place that we're gonna help serve in the place that where there are large needs and people who have a burden for that. And then what they're going to do is people that have a burden, we're going to get them together and we're going to let them do the mission as they're reaching, as they're serving and ministering to these deep needs in our community. They're going to begin to reach these people. And so our church is going to be like the global missions department, or our church is going to be like, we're going to be like the mission agency. And so we're going to provide the framework and the leadership and the governmental structure, but they're going to be out there. So we're going to be a church of micro churches. And so that's a huge trend. And so hopefully maybe that why it's popular, why this is something that's trending. And, obviously clearly we could do a whole podcast of all of the upsides and all the downsides of that.
Yeah.
But that's basically an example of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. I do think one of the positives through all of this stuff that we're talking about is I think one of the positives is a recognition that the big box institutional church cannot get the mission done as currently constructed.
Well, say if they can, we haven't seen evidence of it.
Right.
I think that's an important way to look at it, right? Say, well, why do you say that they can't? And what our response is, have they?
Right. And the statistics that you bring up all the time about, megachurch, 90% of all megachurch growth comes from church transfers, 90%. 90%. So the truth is, and was it in a 20-mile radius, an average of 13 churches close of every new emerging megachurch. And so like you said, yes, there are a lot of the mega church model has been the example of this is what success looks like. But the reality is, as it pertains to the mission, the mega church really is not getting it done. There's a lot of things that they are doing and are able to make an impact in certain things. But there's also a lot that when you get to that size, that is the complication, right? Mm-hmm. There's a great book called Simple Church. And
Tom Rainer.
Yeah, Tom Rainer, right. And the more you become kind of that institutional, the more complex it becomes. And one of the beautiful things about the Book of Acts Church was there was structure, but the structure was a facilitator of multiplication, not a controller of multiplication.
Oh, good.
Right?
Oh, good.
And I think a lot of times, so I do think that there's a movement. I look at it and I'm like, man, there is a positive, because I think there is a big time movement out there of people saying, look, man, we got to get the job done. We got to get the job done. We've got to, what we're doing is not fully reaching the potential that we possess as spirit-filled believers. And so I think we're on a mission. We're on a way, and have a desire to get to where, like, man, we need to make changes. So I think in a lot of ways, man, I think this can be a very positive thing. Like, we're really looking at how do we get this done. Yeah. And so all of those things, again, like you said, we go through the pros and the cons, we go through the good and the bad and the ugly of each of those. I think the important point of what we want to kind of talk about today, we have talked about, and what we have implemented in our churches and what we have tried to coach other churches on is, how do you, instead of worrying about like what that church structure looks like, whether it's a house church or it's a complicated cell group ministry. I love what you said, because it's so true, man. I know pastors that, man, they got to go into the bunker for, weeks on end to record a video or to come up with material for each of their cell group lessons and all of that kind of stuff. Right. And so what we've said is, instead of thinking in that context, which still I think in so many ways is an institutional mindset, is what if we started like this? What if we started and said, let's first begin by creating a culture that understands the importance of community. I saw Jeff Glick's comments on there about, about selling all the wheat, why don't we talk about that and trivializing that in the Western culture? And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely.
That we don't want to sell all that we had because we enjoy our lifestyle. And I think there's a lot of truth to the fact that you can extrapolate that also into lifestyle, that a lot of times we would rather do a cell group or a micro church or something like that, because it still removes individual responsibility.
It's artificial.
So what we've said is, let's create a culture of disciples, first being the disciple, letting Jesus change you, that you then live on mission every single day and you become a disciple maker. And then whatever the expression of the church looks like beyond that, it's the byproduct of missional overflow, not a strategy that says we're going to implement this institutional strategy that's going to help us reach the world. Let's make disciple makers that know how to multiply, and then let the missional overflow. This is, to me, seems to be the Book of Acts model, Ken.
Well, I think that's what really what you're hitting on here can be highlighted in the fact that there are times when you have people who look at, for example, microchurches. And I think microchurches could be something that could be with some nuance, and we don't need to get into this because I think people don't even know what that really is. So there's really probably not a reason to really bring that up. But
Well, and you maybe you can talk about like the interest-based life group things, because I think
Yeah.
that's ultimately what you've done is contextualized that for the purpose of relationship building, right? And so
Mhm.
so again, it's not implementing micro churches,
Yeah.
but it's similar down that vein, right?
Yeah. I think that you could definitely make the argument that that with some nuances, and again, we don't have time to talk about what are those nuances. Okay, that'd have to be a
Right.
whole different podcast. Like, what is them? And we'll see. I don't know. Let's see if we can get, let's see if we can get Michael Frost or maybe Bill Kokenauer on here, and some guys that are involved in that movement, and talk about those things and ask them those hard
Absolutely.
questions. But
We'd love to do that.
yeah. So I think with some nuance, you could do a micro church and make it extremely apostolic.
Sure.
Um, but again, it cannot be a knee-jerk reaction to something you don't like about the church. It can't. This is the problem. Like
Right.
your
Right.
pendulum theory, that what we have a tendency to do is just to swing to the opposite of what we are, or swing to
Sure.
the opposite of what we're doing. That was what I was talking about when I said, when I sounded like I could be a little bit critical about the home church movement, is that in most contexts, aside from like for example, what I think Michael Hanks brings up a good point, who is the North American Missions Director in an area where there are a lot of humongous cities in California. And so I
Right.
think,
Right. Right.
I
Right.
think
Right.
he brought up a point. I don't know if I don't know if you saw it, but he said something
I
about
did
in
see that.
metropolitan cities like San Francisco, the sheer volume of people and the way that they live causes to feel like the house or cell movement is the only way to reach them. And let me see, he followed that up. I just want to make sure. Metro cities and discipleship multiplication must be in place before any of those methods be effective. Exactly. I think that like his point is to say, he was saying, but even then, you're not going to reach the community if you just do it out of pragmatism. If you say, well, we're going to do the house church because
Sure.
we can't afford property, still
Sure.
doesn't mean you're going to reach the city. You're just being pragmatic. You're just being practical about the fact that you just don't have the money to buy an acre of property in San Francisco. It's just
Yeah.
not practical. But I like the point that Michael Hanks is bringing up, because what he's saying is at the end of the day, if you don't have a missional mindset with a multiplication model as your operating system, you're not going to reach people anyway, even if you're doing the house church.
No,
Cell
and
groups.
absolutely. And this is why even like our model for church planning sometimes can be frustrating, because you bring up a great point. Okay, so from a pragmatic standpoint, our model for church planning in a metro area is not realistic. I mean,
No, for real.
you're gonna go spend, $10,000 a month to rent a facility that's very minimal, very small. And now the popular thing is, we'll get you a dream team. Go get you a dream team, and do church better than everybody else. You're competing with all of these other
Yeah.
larger churches and think that you're going to be able to compete with that. And so even in our church planning, we're looking at it and saying, okay, this is the model. But if we had a multiplication movement happening, then
which by the way is a drop in the bucket, not just against those other churches, Chris, but a drop in the bucket to the sheer size of this area, to have even any kind of notoriety or whatever.
exactly, to even be known. And then it's not reproducible, because if you bring in people that are not multipliers, and are just kind of cultural, institutional in their thinking, then if they're not multiplying themselves, how are you going to launch another church and or whatever?
Man.
And it's not reproducible, and that's the whole thing. And
It's not
that's
scalable. Exactly.
not
That's a great point.
scalable. And this is
It's a great
why
point.
we're so passionate about this. If we're going to do it, we've got to the scalability piece says we've got to have multiplying disciple makers every single day, living on mission, where they live, work, and play. And then let the expression of of church planting. We talk about, instead of saying like maybe church plants, we talk about church missions, because
Mhm.
a church plant, it might look different than a traditional, right, conventional, non-conventional church plant. It might look different than what a traditional church plant looks, because that's the expression of missional overflow,
See,
and
that's
we're
the
going to
key right there.
follow
Yep.
where it's going, right?
See, that's the key right there. What would happen? What would happen if we had a missional impulse and a missional model where there was the multiplication of disciples that started overflowing, and it would just overflowed into different demographics, and it overflowed in different geographics.
There you
And
go.
and I think, and I don't think there's, Paul went to, he said, hey, they don't have a church in Ephesus. I'm going to go to Ephesus. They don't have a church in Philippi. I'm going to Philippi was a Macedonian call, but
Right.
but I think there are examples of saying we're going to go to a place, but even in that sense, our organizational institutional impulse is to say we're going to go to a location where there's not a church, and we're going to pop up a church.
Sure.
And I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, what would happen if we had a model where we said, if we commission, even if it's a place, like if it's a place where we're saying, we haven't seen the mission overflow there, and we just feel that God's moving us to go into that area, that community, and to bring the gospel, the hope of the gospel to that place, and to see what God would do. It's kind of a missional effort. What if we had a model? Okay, this is what I'm saying. What if we had a model where we had the ability to have missional overflow, right?
Yeah.
Where when the people got there, we said, now we have a church in.
Right.
And you're like,
Right.
well, you don't have a building yet. You don't have any music. You haven't even had your first worship service. You don't have a church there yet. And we're like, whoa, wait. See, that's the way the institutional church thinks. The institutional church thinks that, well, once you've got a building, once you've got a place, once you started having church services, now we've got a church in that area. And the reason why, here's why, because doing church is our missional model.
So true, man.
Doing
So
church
true.
is our methodology, which
Yep.
is absolute evidence. What does the book of Acts say? When there was persecution in Jerusalem, the Bible said that there were people that were pushed out of Jerusalem, squeezed out of Jerusalem because of the persecution. And the Bible says, and certain men, just people that knew Jesus, certain men went out of Jerusalem preaching Jesus everywhere they went. And there were disciples that popped up all along the way. How did the church in Macedonia, or I'm sorry, in Antioch, how did the church in Antioch start? The people of God, everywhere they went, they just brought the gospel. Everywhere they went, they brought the hope. Everywhere they went, they were looking for hungry people, open people, disciplable people. And when they and finally, all of a sudden, they're at Antioch, and there's missional overflow. This is why Antioch became the sending center of the early church, not Jerusalem. The apostles and the disciples stayed in Jerusalem. Antioch was the place that when Saul became the apostle Paul, God didn't send him to Jerusalem. God sent him to Antioch. Why? Because Antioch had a missional mindset. Antioch was the missional center. So here's the deal. Even in our organization, so we're part of the United Pentecostal Church, right? So even in our organization, there's a new effort, right now in our movement to say, we're going to help you, if you haven't grown the way you want to grow, whatever. And I've looked at it, right? And I'm not dogging, there's nothing wrong with, but every single thing of it says, we're going to teach you how to plan better. We're going to teach you how to do music better. We're going to teach you how to, basically the idea is, well, you haven't grown because you're not doing church good enough yet. So we're going to help you do church better so that you can grow. And man, and you look at those kinds of things and you're like, now this is our best answer here.
Bro. True. So good, man. It's so good. And that's, I mean, I think that's what we've got to look at. And I do believe that there's a movement that's happening, man. I do. I believe there's a movement that's happening so much where we're looking at it saying, no, it's not a matter of doing church better and reaching a point where, like, okay, we finally hit the mark where we're doing church good enough that now we can finally grow. Are there places we need to grow? Places we need to do better in certain things? Should we do it with excellence? Should we continue to stay relevant? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But we've got to come to terms, bro. Okay,
Let's
you
go.
ready? Ready?
I'm on you.
I was reading some notes that you had, and what was the phrase? What was the phrase that you had? It wasn't no tension, no change. It was something along those lines. But basically, if there's no
tension, there's no transformation.
there you go, no tension, no transformation. So I think the reality is we've got to come to terms with the reality of, well, all of our efforts, everything we've tried to do. At the end of the day, we have not mobilized missionaries within the body of Christ.
There it is.
Is
We taught people how to be members.
Is a growth initiative going to mobilize people on how to live on mission every single day? Is doing church better going to mobilize members on how to live on mission every day? No, this is the cultural thing. So it's not about just implementing a home group or implementing a cell group or even interest-based life groups. It's not about
exactly.
It's not about implementing those things. It's about how do we get people to live on mission? And the reason you implemented interest-based life groups, Ken, is because you had people that are like, I'm ready to live on mission. My problem is because we've become, because of separation has resulted in isolation. My sphere of influence has shrunk to almost nothing. I have no connections outside the church. And so you said, well, let's find a way. What are you, again, you do the mission, we'll help you. How can we help you build connections, build relationships in your world? And because what we believe is, if we can get people in the world, they'll make disciples, they'll multiply.
That's it. Because it's a missional spirit living inside of us.
Yes.
And I know for sure that I'm probably going to get criticized for being critical of the growth initiatives that's they're trying to promote right now. And here's the deal. I'm not against doing stuff with excellence. I'm not against, but honestly, we believe that the reason why we haven't reached the world the way that we want to and we should and has been prophesied. Do we really believe that the reason is we just haven't reached the tipping point of doing church good enough? Right. I mean, do we really believe that's the deal? And so the question is, so my question is, where are the voices that are saying, look, the issue isn't, do we have an awesome, do we have an awesome LED background? Do we use click tracks and background tracks to fill in our music and our sound? Do we have a fit team? Do it with excellence, man. Do it with excellence. But here's the deal. Jesus placed the mission in the heart of believers when he said, you're going to go to Jerusalem and you're going to be empowered with my spirit to be witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. Look, I'm all about, let's do things with excellence. I'm all about, let's be the best we can be. Okay. But does anybody out there really honestly believe that the reason why we haven't reached people to the degree that we want to reach people is because those things aren't excellent enough? Really?
Right.
Or is it that the people of God have got to get mobilized and get equipped and get pushed out of the nest and said, look, 6 out of 7 days of the week, you're out there among those people that are lost and people that need Jesus. And man, in Jesus' name, get out there and be a missionary to your world?
Yes.
Somebody's got to be saying that rather than we're going to help you grow by doing church better. So there's got to be a voice that says, yeah, that's just not Jesus's answer.
You can do it. We can help. That's
it.
got to be the
Mantra.
That's got to be the mantra, and not a cliche, the each one reach one in 91 and all that kind of stuff. There's got to be intentional culture making. There's got to be intentional training and development, and then put into practice these principles and these concepts. And guess what? It may result in interspaced life groups. It may result in a group that looks like a home church.
Yeah.
It may result in cell groups. It may result in whatever. But if you have multiplying disciple makers, that expression is not the method is not the end all be all, Ken.
No.
Let's
highlight.
We've celebrated methods, man.
Let's highlight Jeffrey Glick today, because he's on here.
Yeah,
he's in the San Francisco metro area, right? Because we don't have, this is not just a conversation that we're having at people, we're having it with people. And Pastor Jeffrey Glick is in San Francisco. He says, we've had to be diligent to work toward building very urbanized and independent people into a loving disciple-making community, right? So what he's saying is, look, this is probably not, I think this is what I'm hearing him say, is this isn't probably natural. This isn't cultural to urbanize. They're, people sort of just, they go and he says, we to reach this community, we can't do. I don't think Jeffrey Glick in San Francisco can do what even what Ken Dillingham or Chris Dillingham have done in Midwestern Ohio.
Sure.
But here's the deal. So what we say is, well, then so we can go ahead and give him a pass. He can do things methodologically different. No, see, this is the thing. This is where we've got it. The principles are the same.
There you go.
The principles are the same.
There you go.
What we're doing in Midwestern Ohio is the same exact thing that Jeffrey Glick's going to have to do in urban, massively liberal, all of the things that are probably oppositional to him trying to, really reach that community. But the principles are the same. How are you going to create multiplying disciple makers as your multiplication engine? The methodology may look different. The expressions of that may look different, but that's your engine. And so those principles, I think those are the key.
Yeah. We've elevated the methods, bro. That's the bottom line, is we've worshiped the methods and missed the principles. And part of the reasons he's so awesome out in San Francisco is he's an Illinois guy. That's the deal. So he's got those Illinois roots in it, man.
You had to go there, didn't you?
I had to go there, man. Southern Illinois. He may not claim Southern Illinois because that Effingham line. There's that Effingham line, so it may. Not sure if he connects to Southern Illinois, but there's that kindred spirit there for sure.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
Man, bro, I've loved this conversation today. I'm sure people may have looked at it and looked at the title or whatever and thought, I don't know where this is going to go or whatever. And again, our goal is I loved what you said. Somebody's got to have the conversation. Somebody's got to talk about this, because we keep doing the same things. Man, I don't want to get critical, but we keep doing the same things over and over again and expect different results. And at some point, we just got to say, man, maybe, just maybe, there's a flaw in the culture that we've created. How do we change that culture?
That's good, man. That's what prophets do. Prophets call it out and say, and people don't like to hear it, but I think there needs to be and when I say prophetic, I'm not talking about, telling you what's going to, what you're going to have for supper, 2 weeks from today. I'm talking about the voice of a prophet that calls out and says, how long are we going to keep doing this?
Yeah.
How long are we going to keep doing this? And how long are we just going to regurgitate the same information, but we're just next guy up to say it?
Next guy up. So good, man. So good. Well, we appreciate everybody jumping on. A lot of really good stuff on the comments and feedback. Great interaction today. And like you said, we want to have the conversation with, not at people. So we always appreciate the engagement in the discussion and the conversation. So if you have questions, sometimes sometimes you'll say things and maybe people will misunderstand or whatever. If you got questions, man, we'd love to hear from you. Comment on our Facebook page, and love to have that kind of engagement. If you'd like more information, you can go to thedillinghamgroup.org. And I think you mentioned last time for pastors, we've got the Linktree link on our Facebook page. There's an assessment there that you can take to help you identify how close to multiplication are you. And we would love to certainly connect with all of you. So check out all of our sites, website, all of our social media stuff. And we would love to certainly connect with you. Great conversation today, Ken. Appreciate the time, and look forward to coming back next Tuesday. We were on time today. Don't get used to it. Don't get used to it. We'll come back next Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then, go live mobilized. God bless.